I'm going to turn off everybody's mute. I'm going to mute everybody. And then I'm going to share my computer. Right. All right. Let me see if I can move this. There's a, there we go. Control bar up here that I'd like to move over to my other screen because it kind of gets in the way. Okay. There we go. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining in. Today we're going to talk about actions first, and then we're going to talk a little bit about blending options. And the blending options, as far as layer styles are concerned, blending option is just one small piece of it, and you've already seen most of it, or you've already been involved with most of it, without even knowing it. So it's going to be fairly quick, I think, on that. And some of it's very confusing, but and stuff that we'll never use, but I'm going to show it to you anyway, just so you know it's there. But we're going to talk about actions first. And when we talk about actions, I always think back about my early days back in 1983, 1984, whenever the PC revolution came about, or explosion, whatever you want to call it. And the first few applications that came about for the PC, one of them was Lotus 123 and WordStar. Those were the two biggies that I can remember anyway. I was a financial analyst at LTV, and those were the two that we used the most. And the Lotus 123 was the big spreadsheet program at that time. And then, of course, a couple of years later, Microsoft kind of exploded and they took over the market, and Lotus 123 kind of went to the wayside. But basically, in those spreadsheet programs, you could build macros. And those of you that have worked a little bit with those, that's kind of what we're going to be involved in with actions. The biggest difference between the macros in Excel and the actions here is that at least in Lotus and early Excel, you could just write them. You didn't have to do the learning part of it. When I say learning, you used to just press a button or press an icon and say learn, and it would record all your keystrokes, and then you turn it off, and then it would have the code written for you to do that action. I remember when my first few was save the spreadsheet, and then another one was print the spreadsheet, and before I printed, I always added to recalculate the spreadsheet and stuff like that. So it was stuff that's kind of menial nowadays, but back then I thought it was really cool. And we're going to kind of start that way with actions with this, and kind of take baby steps before we get into it. And we're going to kind of build real slowly. But we're going to start, I'm going to show you the panel over here. If you can see my cursor on the right, is where the actions are. Now, if you don't have actions, all you do is go over here to Windows and make sure to click Actions right here, and it will open the panel. And if it has a check by it, that means that that panel is actually active right now, or it's open. If it doesn't have a check by it, it still could be available over here. It just means that it's not open at the moment. So if you don't see actions, you click on it and it might open up over here. If actions were in your little icons down here, it looks like a little arrow like that. You click on it and it opens up the actions panel. I like to have it up here with my history. This is just my preference. You can have it however you want. If you very rarely use actions, you could not have it not even open, and then when you click on it with the window, it will open up as a separate panel over here, and then you can close it and it will be around until you open it again. But I like to have it available because I use actions a little bit. You can see that I've created some up here and separated them into separate folders for what I use. And you've seen me kick off actions, and you've got the actions for the luminosity mask from Greg Benz, I keep it up here as well. And whenever, you know, you go to or watch a webinar, or you are involved in some kind of activity like that, a lot of times the photographers or the people that are doing the Photoshop retouching or teaching will say, you know, I'm going to give you free brushes and free this and that, and it usually includes actions. And so then you usually have a lot of actions that you can bring in from those folks, and will do certain things. For example, Glenn Dewis, if you read his book, he has actions in there. If you take his tutorial for changes, or not changes, times, you also get some actions with that. So they're, you know, they're kind of like, but different. They're kind of like presets in Lightroom, but they're different because presets basically record settings, you know, how much exposure and how much shadow and highlights and, you know, the sliders. Over here, it actually records keystrokes. So it does a little bit, it's kind of like presets, but a little different in that respect. So you can see that we have, the way I've got mine set up, I've got folders over here. And each one of these folders, if you open it up, it's got the separate actions that go along with it. And then you can run those actions independently. This is just the way I organize it. There's different ways to organize it, but this helps me to know what I have and how to use them, or where they are, you know, at a moment's notice whenever I do need them. Down here at the bottom, just like the other panels, you have some icons. This right here means to stop the recording. This is start the recording. This is begin the, or actually this is begin the recording. This right here lights up when this recording is happening, and then you can stop it right here. This is actually run the action too. This right here adds your, it's called a action set, but basically it's a folder, put everything in. This is to add a new action, and then this right here is to trash your action, delete it. So it's just like most of the other panels have, you know, icons down at the bottom that you can use as well. And as usual, you have this flyout menu on the right-hand side, and you've got a lot of things in here. And we're going to talk about some of these separately. I'm not going to explain them right now, but as we go along, I'll be talking about a lot of these. There is a button mode. Now, button mode is something that it seems kind of cool, because all you have to do is click on it and it runs it. Notice there's no icons at the bottom. So there's nothing really to do here. You can't record, you can't do anything here except run your actions. My problem here is that there's no organization. Now, there is colors, and you can assign colors to your actions, but they're kind of all over the place here. You got some down here at the bottom, you've got some up here at the top, and then you've got some that are named the same thing. So to me, this is more difficult to know exactly what I'm running than my organization over here with the folders. But it's your preference. I mean, you know, if you can organize it that way and you love it that way, then go for it. I've run the button mode a few times, and it just, it confuses me as to where I am. So we're going to be doing it in the list mode, and primarily we'll do it in the list mode because we can do all of these things. So if we open this up and look here, create new action, same thing as this plus down here. Just like the other panels, new action set, same thing as this right here. So duplicate, delete, and play. These are, the duplicate's not a button down here, but you can duplicate an action, and then if I clicked on an action, this would become lit. And then you can duplicate that action and then go in and change little parts of it. So if you had an action that you wanted to change, you wanted another action to do the same thing except a little bit different, you could duplicate it and then go in and make those changes. So then you also have these things right here. Start recording is also down there. Record again is, to me, is the same thing as copy it again. Insert menu, insert stop, conditional, insert path. Those are all, we're going to talk about those as we begin building our actions. Action options, let me open an action here just so you can see that. Action options are basically what the few things that you can do about that action. So here's the name. You can rename it here. It's still in this set, so you can't change the set, but you can also give it a function key and give it a color. And we'll talk about those in just a minute. And then you have playback options. Whenever you're playing an action, you have these options that you can use for playback. Typically, when you're running it and you're not building one, you want it on accelerated mode because that means you want it to run everything as fast as it can. So you also have step-by-step. Any of you that have done any kind of programming appreciate the step-by-step because if you have errors and you can't figure out where it is, you can run your program one step at a time. And when it errors, you can at least isolate the area of the code where it's having a problem. The thing with this is that you can't, it doesn't stop. It just pauses for like, I don't know how long, 3 seconds or something like that between each step. So it just goes much, much slower. You can't, it doesn't really stop. You have to actually put a stop in there. We'll talk about that later. If you want to pause it, you can pause it for a number of seconds, and you can, this is the same as this up here. The difference is that you don't control the number of seconds of the step-by-step. Down here, you can pause it for a number of seconds. So if you wanted 10 seconds between each one, you could put 10 seconds in here, and each step would pause by 10 seconds. I typically don't use these because I can look at it and pretty much decide where the error is, or when it errors out, it tells me where the issue is, and then I can just go in and take a look at that. So I don't really use that, but it could be helpful in the beginning. And then allow tool recording. Tool recording means that it can record your tools over here as well as other options. Now, primarily, it records all that stuff anyway. The only things that it will not record if you don't have this turned on is what you do when you have the brush turned on, or the clone stamp tool, or the clone or the healing tool. So those are tools that it records actually your brush options, which I don't find useful for me. But if you were a designer, for example, and you were coming in here and you wanted to create some kind of neat little tool like this, and you start scrolling around like this and create some kind of design that you think is really cool, well, if you were recording that, it would record that stroke for you. So big deal for me. It doesn't work. I mean, I don't have any use for that, but that's what this is designed for. If there are people out there that do painting or actual illustrations on here with their brushes and everything, and they want to record it so that it can, I don't know, if you created some kind of logo or something, I don't know, then you could record it and then just run that action and it would do that. So doesn't do anything for me, but it might be helpful for some people. So that was, oops, sorry. That was allow tool recording. Clear all actions, reset actions, load actions, replace actions. Those are all pretty self-explanatory. Then down here, you have, these are actually Photoshop actions that you can load. So let me just close this and show you. If I wanted to do one, let's say, well, textures, we talked about textures. So now we've got all these actions that actually create textures. So if I wanted to create bricks, I just click on that and run, and you've got a brick. Well, you got bricks out here that it created. So I don't use these either, but these actually, some of these might be really handy. And I may be investigating those a little bit more as I go forward. But I'm going to trash these now just to keep this a pretty clean area here. So that's what all of these things are down here at the bottom. And then close and close tab group will just close your panel. So that's pretty much the menu and the icons down here. So let me just say, why would you want to do actions? To me, there's two main reasons. First of all is productivity. If you have something that you do consistently and you go through you know, so it takes some time to do, and it's the same thing over and over, then you can write an action that will record, or that will perform very quickly where it used to take you a few minutes. And that may not seem like it's so much, but if you're doing a lot of images, it could save you a lot of time. So productivity is one of the big reasons. And the second reason for me is some of these things, I don't really necessarily want to remember all those steps. I don't necessarily want to remember, you know, the particular settings that I put in there. So for example, frequency separation, where you have to do apply image. I never use apply image except for that. So I tend to forget the settings that you use for apply image. So I've got a frequency separation action that runs it for me, and it's done in like half a second, and then I just go in there and apply it. So it's one of those things where you just, you know, you want to speed it up for productivity, and then you don't necessarily need to remember all of those steps. So that's one of the things that makes actions important. And you can see I don't have a lot of actions. I just have a few, but I'm finding more and more things that I want to do with actions. So let's create a very simple action, and then we'll begin to do something that really makes sense. So I'm going to do something that you probably would not need an action for, but we're going to create, first of all, I'm going to create a folder for this class so that we can start putting stuff in this folder to be, you know, like naming your layers. You always want to do things fairly cleanly. So we're going to create a new folder. You click on the little icon there, and it says new set. We're going to call it RTPC, PC Photoshop. And when you do that, it creates this little folder over here. Now it's ready to have some actions in it. So we're going to create an action. We're going to hit this plus. And when you do that, you've got this box that comes up, and it's, you were in this set, RTPC, but you could change it if you decide you want to put another set. And we'll call this add layer. Okay. Now you could also assign a function key. Now I've had very little success assigning function keys, but we'll try just to see if it'll work. F10, Shift, Command. So Shift, Command, F10 should run this. You can also assign a color, which does absolutely nothing unless you're in button mode, but we'll assign a color. We'll call it red, and then record. And now you can see the red light here is on, ready, and any keystrokes that I do, or anything I do now is going to be recorded. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a new layer, okay? And then I'm going to stop. That simple. So now if I trash that and I come up here to add layer and I run it, boom, it adds a layer just like that. So I mean, that's really it in a nutshell for it being easy. Now let's try Shift Command F10. So Shift Command F10, nothing. So maybe that's assigned to something else. I don't know. Maybe that's what my problem is in using those. So I tend to not pay any attention to those. Excuse me. So let's run this a couple of times here, and you just keep running it and running it. And now let's come in here and let's run another one that says, let's create a new one here. We're going to call this fill with black. Okay. So let's just select this one, and let's, oops, didn't want to do that. Okay. So here's something that you can do. I didn't mean to do that. So all you got to do is turn it off now and then just throw it away. Okay. So now if I'm going to fill with black, I can come here and run that fill with black. And nothing happened. Why did nothing happen? Oh, I threw away everything. One thing I'll tell you right now, and I meant to tell you this in the beginning, is I will make mistakes. That happens with this. You just have to realize when you make a mistake what you did wrong. So now, if we want to continue with this, I could throw the whole thing away and start totally over. But I already have my action set up. All I got to do is add the steps to it. So I can just hit this again with that already there and just say record. And now it's ready to record whatever I do. So I am going to come down here and I'm going to fill that with black. So if I go to here, edit, fill, color, oops, yeah, color, black. Okay, so now I fill that with black, and now I'm going to turn it off. Okay, so now it filled that with black. So let's take this and throw it away, and let's run fill with black. And boom, you get an error message. And I did this on purpose because I wanted to show you what happened. Whenever you're creating these things, it's the old saying when you were programming, garbage in, garbage out, right? The thing is that layer 2, it's saying specifically to select layer 2. Well, I threw layer 2 away. So it can't find layer 2 anymore. So now it's saying the command select is not available. So it's not going to, so you get this error message. Now, it's probably going to continue and just fill this one with black. And I say continue, yeah. But if that were a step that you were doing that you needed specifically on a particular layer, it's, you have to be careful. This is one of those pit potholes that you can fall into if you're not careful. And you'll see as we go along, whenever we're building this, some of the things that I'm doing specifically because you can't be real literal in here. It has to know that it can always find what it's looking for. And that's one reason that you always need to test your things. So, and you test it with every different scenario you can think of. So let's just start building something that means something. Okay. One of the things that I do constantly when I am creating files for social media is I first change it to sRGB so that it can be viewed properly on the internet with everyone. Then the second thing I do is change the longest side to 2048 pixels. That's recommended by Facebook. Don't know if it really matters, but that's what I do. And then the third thing I do is I put my logo on it. And then fourth thing I do is I save it as a JPEG to a folder. And then I go to that folder and post it. Now, this may sound like a lot of work, but if you build an action here to do that for you, it's much easier. So we're going to start, and I'll probably stumble around here a little bit because I keep, I'm trying to make sure that it's very clean over here. One of the things that you'll notice is that I have a little folder down here called support actions. What those support actions do is I don't run them independently, but they support the actions that I run up here. These actions up here call this information down here in order to do the things I want to do. Not all of them do, but some of them. So there's some support issues here. And we're going to begin to build. We're going to start very simply creating, and then we're going to decide, can those go in the support actions or do they need to go into the main action? And then we have to change them to make them go there. So it's kind of one of those things. This is the way I do it. You don't have to do it this way, but I think it'd be a good learning tool for you. So, excuse me. First thing we're going to do, and I'm going to go to an actual picture over here. Which one of these do I want to do? We'll do this one. Why not? And we're going to actually run it on both of these. This is the senior I shot last night. I thought it turned out pretty good. So the first thing I'm going to do is write an action to change this to sRGB. Now, whenever you change an image to sRGB, it flattens the image. So typically, I would be, worried about if I had here. Let me back up for a second. whenever I use, let's say, external plugins, like I use Luminar sometimes, and I use Topaz sometimes, and those kind of plugins, whenever I use those, and then I come back in here and I try to run something, say I want to create a smart object, or I want to do a stamp visible. Sometimes it goes in and it opens those plugins again, and it runs through those plugins and comes back, and it's got to do all that, so it's time consuming. But whenever I create the sRGB, it flattens the image. So that's the first thing that I do, just because if I run anything else, it may kick off some plugins, and I don't want that. So don't worry, when we save it, in the end, we're actually going to bring all of this back. So you're not going to lose your layers. We're just going to create this file as a JPEG and store it. And then when we come back, you're going to have all your layers back eventually. But the first thing we're going to do is change this to sRGB. So we're going to come over here, and I'm going to say, create an action. We're going to call it sRGB. Okay. Click record. And then I'm going to come over here to edit, convert to profile. You can see that it's Adobe RGB, change to sRGB, click OK, flatten the file, and now I'm done. Okay, so now if I come back in my history, click on the original again, I got everything back. So I'm back to where I was. So now I'm going to run this and see if it works. So we just click go, flattened it. Let's go look at edit, convert, and yeah, it's sRGB. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, what if it already is RGB? So I'm going to come in here and create a new one. Oops, sorry, I said to run that. I didn't want to run it. Back to actions. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to say if, oops, can't type tonight, sRGB. Okay, I misspelled that. I've got my Wacom in front of me, in front of the keypad, so I'm having to reach across. Okay, so I'm going to say record, and then immediately I'm going to end it, because what I want to do is do an if conditional thing. Okay, so what this does is it says if, and here are your only, these are your only if statements here. These are only conditional, so you can't just be right in yourself and say if it's this. So you have to use these. So it's not a real big list, but it's pretty good. It can help you in a lot of cases. And if you can't do a conditional, then you just have to go about it a different way. You can still do it. But right here, document profile is sRGB. So if it's sRGB, I want to do nothing. If it isn't sRGB, then I want to change it to sRGB. Okay? So then I click OK. And I don't have to say done, because that is it. So now I can take this and I can run this, and it said if it's not sRGB, to change it to sRGB, right? So edit, convert, and it's sRGB. So this is actually the one we want. This is a supporting one, but this is the one that we're going to want to use. Now both of these we're going to find out are going to be supporting, but we're going to go ahead and leave them like that right now. So now I'm going to make sure I go back and get all my stuff again. If any of this doesn't make sense to you, just type right in. You can always interrupt me with a question, or you can always, tell me if anything's not happening or whatever. But this, to me, I'm trying to start very small, and I think this was one of the easy way to teach you the if conditional statement. Next, we're going to decide how to resize it. So we're going to create a new one here. And we're going to say set width to 2048. Oh, 2048. Not going to worry about any of the rest of this stuff. And I'm going to hit record. And we're going to come in here, go to image, image size, width 2048. Make sure that this is set to preserve details. We haven't talked about this, but this is probably the best setting if whenever you resize your images. Preserve detail, there's several of them down here, and you'll get different people suggesting different things, but I think the majority of folks will suggest preserve details is probably the best. So I click OK. It's going to resize. Now this is going to take a little while because I didn't flatten the image, but I don't want to flatten the image at this point. Okay, so it changed the width. Now I'm going to turn that off. Okay, now we're going to go back. Always go back to your original whenever you're doing these little bitty, because these are all just little independent actions that we're going to build and create a nice action. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing for the height. We're going to say set height to 2048. Record. So we got image size, height 2048. Okay. Takes a little longer when it's got to go through all this stuff. Okay, so then I stop it and make sure I go back before I do anything else. Excuse me. Okay, so now I have actions for sizing it, both of these. One of these is going to be called. So now we're going to have one that we're going to create that says set image size. Oops. Okay, and record and stop. So now we're going to come in here and add another condition. And now it says document is landscape. So if document is landscape, I want to run set width to 248. If it's not, then I want to say set height to 248. Now, if it's square, it doesn't matter. It's going to set it. If width is if it's not landscape, well, let's see, it isn't going to run it if it's square. So we'll have to add that in. Okay, so now we have that. So now if I say set image size and I run it, it should set the height at 2048. Okay, which looks pretty good. Let's make sure. Image size and the height is set to 2048. So now we have action for setting the color mode and for setting the size of the image. Now we want to do the logo. Okay. Now the logo is a little tricky. It gets a little trickier as we go. So we're going to create a new one for logo, and I'm going to show you basically the way the way that you would think that you would do it, and then I'm going to tell you why that doesn't work. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to flatten this just so that we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so whenever I have a logo, by the way, that I add. It's a white logo or a black logo, either one, and it has a transparent background. It just spells out Bob Wood from Photography. So yours may be different. It could be a symbol, or it could be, you know, a long logo. Whatever it is, this will still work for it. So you can call it a watermark. You can call it, you know, a logo, whatever. But what we're going to do is we're going to say add logo. Record. Okay. And then we're going to come over here and do File, Place Embedded, we're going to go, mine is under pictures folder here. We're going to go find it, and it's right here. Bob Whitman high res. It's a PNG file. Load it, and it's going to come across like this. Now, what we're going to do is, if you look up here, you'll see that you have these coordinates, and you have the width and the height, and they're both the same percent. So I'm going to bring that percent down, and I'm going to bring that percent down to 2.5. And you may want to do it a different size, but I'm going to do 2.5. And whenever, as long as you have this right here clicked, they're both going to be in the same always. So I could have drug it down or whatever, but I just decided to type it in, so it's a little easier. And then I'm going to click on the check here. You have the option of hitting enter twice, or you can just hit the check and it'll commit it. So now you've got it here, and you'd be tempted to just drag it down here, but you can't really do that. But I'm going to go ahead and do that, and just to kind of show you what's going to happen. So we drag it down here, something like this. This is probably what you do now, even if you don't do an action to bring it in, you probably just drag it over there if you have it as a file. And then we're going to click done. So now we're going to take this and throw it away, and I'm going to run it, add logo, and let's see what happens. Okay, looks pretty good right there where we said it was going to be. And I hope you can see that. It's kind of faint. Maybe I should have done the black one, but anyway, and you could have one that says add white logo and one that says add black logo, and you could have one for each. So here's where the problem is. This is full size. If you look at the image is, I've cropped it a little bit. So it's 7869 by 5248. What if I take this down to 2048? Like for Facebook. Okay. Now I run the logo program. So where's the logo? It's not there. Where is it? If I do a free transform on that, you can see that the logo is way down here. That's because it literally takes the location. I've got to turn that off. It literally takes that location and says move it so many inches. See, to this inch, to that inch. So it literally moves it per inches. And if I'm taking this image and I'm making it smaller, it doesn't proportionally make that move smaller. So you can't really do that. So we're going to redo this, and I'm going to show you how you should do it. It's really pretty simple. So we're going to take, now remember that all you got to do is drag these and throw them away, rather than just starting over or throwing it all away. Basically, we're starting over anyway. But here's what you should do. We're going to record. We're going to do File, Place Embed. Go back to that same file. Place comes up on the screen. We're going to make it 2.5. 2.5. We're going to click check. And oh, if we didn't flatten the image, shoot. Okay, well I'm going to do it. Man, oh, I've got it recording. Doggone it. Okay, we're gonna throw these away again. I'm sorry. I need to flatten the image because it's going to be flattened anyway because you're going to do the sRGB. So, told you I'd make mistakes. Okay, so let's right click and flatten the image. And now we can start out here one more time. Edit. Oops, sorry, File, Place Embedded. Select my white logo, place it, change it to 2.5, hit the check. And now what you need to do is highlight both of these so that you can use the align tools up here. they're not going to be available unless you highlight to align two layers, because that's what you're doing. You're aligning two layers. And you're going to say, I want to go to the left and I want to go to the bottom. You can see that it puts it down the bottom like this. Now again, you're tempted to just drag it out here like this, but you can't really do that because again, it's going to take it literally for the distance that you're going to do it. So just to make sure that this works, let's stop it. Let's take this and throw it away. And now let's try it. Oops. Oh, I didn't start it at the top. See, that's what happens whenever you are in a hurry here. So, okay, see, it added it real quick. It's already there. Now the problem is that, like I said, if you're okay with this, you would just drag it up there at this point. Actually, you got to just highlight the one layer and then drag it up there and do whatever. But that's not a good answer. So the answer is your logo needs to have a big border around it, a big transparent border. And that's what's going to happen. Then you'll take that transparent border and that's what will hit this left and bottom area. So one more time, we're going to take these, throw them away. And I happen to have created my logo with the border like that. But I showed you that because I wanted you to see this is the answer to fixing that. And I actually went online and struggled and looked around and finally found some lady that showed how to do that. And it was really, really super simple. And I just didn't have an answer. So one more time, have a flattened layer to make it easy. So we're going to start recording. And we're going to go to File, Place Embedded. And this time I have an image up here that says border on it. So this is the white res with border. Now that comes across here and you can tell it's got a border around it, which is much better. We're going to also bring it down to 2.5 and hit the check. And then come over here and highlight this. Now, I highlighted that with a click. What if this was not a flattened image? And I'll show you in a minute maybe a better way to do that. But anyway, we clicked on background. What if this weren't named background? See, it says select layer background up here. What if this were not a background layer, but is layer 0? This is going to fail if that's the case. So I made that mistake, but I'm going to go ahead and show you that you go left and you go down and now you've got some area around that. If that's not enough area, then you just make your border a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to stop it. We're going to take this, throw it away and run it. I hit run. And there it is, right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this and I'm going to show you another little trick so that it doesn't select the background. So one more time, I know you get tired of this, but by the time I'm done, you should be able to remember it, hopefully. Okay, take this, throw it away. Okay, one more time. I'm going to record, File, Place Embedded, with border. Okay, 2.5 up here. And again, you know, you could change this to whatever number, 2.5. Check. And now what we're going to do is use a keyboard shortcut. If you press, you know that if you press Shift and click, it's going to add it, right? Or even Command or Control and click. If you press Shift and Option or Alt and then the left bracket key, it moves your cursor down. So it's going to not be looking for a particular background layer, but it's going to select backward layer. So it means it's just going to go down one. And since this is a flattened image, that's exactly what we want right there. So if this were not called background, but called layer 0, this would still work. So then we're going to come in here and select left, select bottom, and now we have the logo where we want it. And now I can turn this off. Okay. Okay. So that gives us the add logo. And this is going to work whether it is a vertical or a horizontal. So if I run the same thing here, don't prove me wrong. Here we go. So here it is here. And this is this must be a totally different size image because that's much bigger. Image size. Oh, this is the bigger image than the other one. So that right there is bigger too. So if you didn't want it, this big, you could always do a different one vertical than you do horizontal instead of having one that does them both. So anyway, that is how to add your logo. So now we have changed sRGB, changed the size, and add your logo. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create one that does all of those. And we're going to move some into a support area. So I'm going to click up here, and I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it RTPC Support Actions. Okay. So what you have to be careful of is anything that calls another action can't be moved without rewriting it. So add logo is one that is really, we can call it a support action, but I can run it independently. Set image size, that is one that's going to call these two. So if I do that, I've got to rewrite it a little bit. sRGB can definitely be, well, we've got see there's an if statement with that one too. So what's going to turn out here is that if I take this, sRGB, both of these, and move them down here to this support, and this is all you got to do, you just move them down here like that, just like you do anything else with layers or whatever. Now if I open this up, am I okay? Convert profile current document, and this one here is, oh, it's got an if. And what this if is going to do is it's looking at in the action over here, the action set. So it's calling the action set up here, and it's going to say it doesn't exist because this was moved down here instead of being up there. So this is going to be a little bit of an issue, but all we have to do is you have to rerun it and change the action set. So in here, all I got to do is say if sRGB, so I'm going to come here and run a new action. Actually, I think I can do it right here. Just create another if condition. Yeah. So if it's sRGB, then do nothing else, changed sRGB. So I just created a new action here, or a new if, and I can take this if and throw it away. So now I should be able to run this right here without any problem, hopefully. Ah, see, I didn't have it flattened, but it should be flattening it itself, which is kind of weird. Sometimes when it runs these plugins, you have to help it along. Most of the time it's supposed to go out and apply and then go back on its own. There we go. Rendering smart filters. See, it's rerunning all of this stuff. Oop, crash, burn. So, you know what happened there, right? I was running a NIC filter and I don't have the new updates. I got the old one and it ran and crashed.
I had a crash today.
So we're going to open back up and hopefully I still have all those actions and everything. Okay. I don't know why it did that. Let's go back. Where were we? This one. Okay. The actions should still be there. Okay. So maybe that'll come out. There we go. RTPC Photoshop.
Hey, Bob, can you hear me?
Okay.
Bob, can you hear me?
This
Bob.
one says,
I don't think he's hearing.
No, he's not. Sorry, Robin.
So if I take this,
Hi, Jane.
Nice to hear you. I wish he could hear you.
it should work. Now I'm going to go ahead and flatten it this time just to be safe. So it didn't run that. Let's try again. So we're going to run this. And that was quick that time. So edit, convert to profile, and it changed it to sRGB. So that's the way it's supposed to work. Okay, so let me take this back. Not sure why it had to rerun those because it should be flattening it. Okay, so now I move that down here. So now what do I want to add up here to take its place? We're going to create a new action up here. Let me close these. And we're running, well, I think that the other part's only going to take about a half hour, so I expected this to take most of the time. So what I'm going to do is add a new action in here. And this action is going to say, prepare for social media. Okay, and record. And the first thing of preparing for social media is I want to run this action right here. So I'm going to say run this action. So you can run an action inside an action, which is what we're doing here. Oh, I forgot to flatten it again. Doggone it. So it's probably going to crash again. Let's see. Where's my cursor? I can cancel. Well, I have to apply. There we go. And then if I can cancel. Oh, I guess it canceled. Good. Okay, so let me turn that off. I think it's probably okay. It's going to play that action. I need to flatten it.
Hey, Bob, can you hear me?
Okay, so let's try that. See if it works. Did it do it? Oh, it was already done. I didn't change it back. Oops, selected the wrong thing. So we're looking to see if it has sRGB, and it is. So let's go back up here and go back to the beginning. See if I'm going to flatten it. Okay, so the objective here is I want to consolidate all of these things so that you run one action. It does everything. So we're doing one at a time. I'm setting up prepare for social media, and I want it to play the action to change it to sRGB. So that's the first step. So if I run this, is it going to work? And I test it on every step. Okay, it ran really fast if it ran. And it did, changed to sRGB. So the next thing is to set the height or width. And again, I could run these as support actions in here. So what I'm going to do is take these two. Let me close these up here so you can see a little better. I'm going to take the height and width, and I'm going to move them down here. And let's see, and the image size, all three of them there. And I'm going to move them down here. And the one that needs to change is this set image size, because it's going to be calling these other two. So I look in here, it says if. And right here it says if the width is 248, or if it's landscape, then play this action, else play this action. Both of them are actions that were previously up here in the RTPC Photoshop group. So what I'm going to do is come down here and just add a different if. And I actually am going to go ahead and close this, or throw it away, and just add a condition right here. So conditional, and I'm going to say if it's landscape, okay, then I want to set the width to 2048, else set the height to 2048. Now, a little bit of pre-planning, I wouldn't have to be doing this, but I just kind of wanted to run those first and then get you so that you could understand what I'm doing, and then set them down here under the support actions. So now, if I run this set image size, it's flattened. Doesn't matter if it's already a profile. So I would say set image size. I'll set the image size as real quick. Set it to 2048 for the width. So image size 2048 for the width. Okay, so that's pretty fast. So then what I'm going to do is create one up here where it says prepare for social media, and I'm going to add to the bottom of this another recording, and I'm going to say to click on set image size and play it, and then I'm going to turn it off. So now I've got this prepare for social media with setting an sRGB, with set image size, and then the next thing is going to be to add my logo. Okay, so let me first come in here and change the image size. Well, I did here. Change the image size back. Okay, and back over to actions. And now I have add logo up here, so I can just, if I want to take add logo and move it down here, I can do that. And then then let's see, did that call anything? No, so that should be fine. So now I can come in here and at the end of this, I can say record, and then I can come down here to add logo and run it. And it added the logo, so now I can turn it off. And now I've got all three of these actions that I wanted. So now I'm going to come back. I'm going to leave the image flattened because I don't want it to crash, but we may have to add something in there that says flatten the image. So now, if I go to the beginning of this, I'm going to close my support, and I'm going to close this. So you actually have one action here to run. And let's make sure I got everything set up right. I think it's sRGB, I see Adobe RGB, size, image size, 8256, so we're good there. Let me just make this a little smaller. There we go. Now I'm going to run this action and let's see what happens. There we go. So it took, what, 3-4 seconds there? And it depends on what kind of memory you have and what other things you've got running and all that kind of things as to how long this is going to take. So we have it. We have, if you look, we've got my logo down here. It's kind of hard to see in all this greenery. Excuse me. It is set RGB, sRGB, and the size, image size, 2048 on the width. Pretty cool. So now let's go, just for grins, and let's run it on a vertical. And on this vertical, we're going to set this. Oh. Okay. I lost my layers somehow. Well, this is a recovered file, so the actual file is still out there, so I'm okay. Okay, so prepare some social media. I'm going to run it on this one. And there we go. They did it horizontal. I mean vertical. We have sRGB. We have my logo down here. I don't know if you can see that. Logo. And we have image size, 2048 on the height. So we're going to take this a step further. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in here. Let me redo this first. There we go. We're going to save this as a JPEG. So next, I'm going to come in here. At the bottom of this, we're going to record again. We're going to do File, Save As on my computer. We're going to go to, I have a folder under Pictures, one called Facebook. And then we're going to, it says recovered. I don't want to say recovered. And I want it to be JPEG. So I'm not sure if it's going to, how it's going to do that. Should have left it, I guess. Then I'm going to say save. And I'm going to change this to 3. And I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to turn it off. And that's all of this right here. JPEG 3, saved there, is that name with copy. I don't know about with copy, but anyway. So now we've got it being saved out to my Facebook area. So I'm going to go out there right quick. Let's see. And delete that one. Facebook. Okay. And move that to trash. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to run it again. Prepare for Facebook. Let's see if it does everything. There we go. Now let's go out there and look. And there it is, saved in that file. So I'm going to do one more thing to finish this one up. That trash can again. I want to save myself with my history. So I want to come here. I want to do a snapshot. And then I want to delete that snapshot. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another part. And it's actually going to save it at the bottom, and then I'm going to move it to the top. So we'll just go ahead and put it down there, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say history. We're going to take a snapshot. I'm going to call it for social media, and hit OK. Okay. And then I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to turn it off. Okay, so here's the make snapshot. I'm going to move it at the top because I want it to make a snapshot before I do anything. Then I'm going to come down here at the bottom, and I'm going to do it again. And then I'm going to go to history, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to delete the snapshot. Okay? So now it's deleted. And then I turn this off. What this is going to do is it's going to make a snapshot in the beginning. It's going to play my actions. It's going to save it, and then it's going to delete this. It's going to take me back to the snapshot, and then it's going to delete it. Okay? And the reason for that is because I want to make sure I have all of my layers still here. And you're going to see this doesn't have any layers, so I'm going to move over to the other file over here. It's only got 2 layers. Well, and what we're going to do is run this for that. So I'm going to say go. Okay. The heck did it do? Whoops. Okay, I'm not sure what it did there. It didn't do anything. Let's try again. Nah, it's going to go to Luminar. So I guess I do have to flatten these things. Okay. I've got to see if I can cancel Nick before it gets into that. Come on. There we go. I'm just going to say cancel. Okay, come on. Oh, come on. Sorry about that, guys. It's always flat in the image whenever I've changed it to sRGB, so it's kind of, I guess it doesn't always, but it always seems like it did for me. Come on, let's get out of this. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go back. Throw that away. Okay, so I'm going to go back and just add that in there. So it should be right after make the snapshot to flatten the file. So I'm going to go right here, start, and then I'm going to go to right click here and flatten image. Okay, and put it right there. Okay, so let's see if that takes care of the issue. Okay, so run again. It's not doing anything. So let's see. Is it making a snapshot? It's not making a snapshot. Let's go back up here. All right, it's must be frozen or something because it's not even allowing me to go back up there. Let's go to another image. See, it's got something in the history here and it's not letting me get out. Okay. Let's try it here. Here we go. Let's just see. Those may be frozen for some reason. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, that was really quick. Now, it didn't look like it did anything, and I had my question about it there for a minute. But if you look, we're going to go over to here. There's the file right there, 4694-1. Oops, that's another one. That's this one. So maybe it didn't do anything. So let's look again. Yeah, it's not doing anything. So individually, they seem to work okay. So let's see. Let's put a, see, it's not giving me an error message or anything. It's just not doing it. So it could be that what I did a minute ago kind of messed things up. But if I were to get out and come back in, I would try that. But individually, these seem to be running just fine. But the idea is to create the snapshot, then flatten the image, play your actions, save it, select that snapshot back, and then delete the snapshot so it's not there anymore, and you should be back to where you started. Let me just bring in a new file just for grins and see if that makes any difference. Let's see. Just pick something here. From Missouri, we'll try, since I'll just grab something. I have no idea what I'm selecting here, so let's see. Let me grab something a little further down. That one. You can see I got the little bouncy ball here, but there's a couple of other things I really want to show you after we get through with this in regard to actions. One of those is going to be, what if I want to add a filter and I want to be able to adjust that filter or an adjustment layer, and I want to be able to adjust, set that adjustment layer the way I want it. Well, there is a way in there that you can select certain areas or certain functions and say stop here and let me take care of it. And those are called modals, and you can add those modals in there, and it's real easy, and they just stop there and wait for you to make an adjustment. Hopefully this must be a pretty big file. But I'll try this. If it doesn't work here, then we'll move on. But this is the, I mean, I did everything, I think I did everything right here. Played those actions individually and they seem to work just fine. So we'll create something here in a minute with one of these images where we can do our own adjustments. Come on. Any questions while we're waiting? You guys fall asleep?
Bob, we can't. I don't
Hopefully
think
you're
you
still
can
there.
hear us.
Actions are really pretty simple if you go through them, you know, little modules at a time like I did here, or if you're doing little simple things. But I just thought this would be something really, really simple that we could build on. Here we go. Let's try this and see if it runs on this. If it doesn't, we'll just move on. So prepare for social media. Let's see if it's going to work. Looks like it's working. And it, you know, like I said, it depends on how much memory you have, what else you have going on as to how long some of these are going to take. And of course, this is performing 3 or 4 things here on a pretty good size file. But hopefully it's, you know, sometimes Photoshop amazes me. I'll say, you know, create a smart object out of this layer, and it'll do it in like 2 seconds. And then the next time I would say create a smart object, it takes 2 minutes. So it's kind of weird. Okay, so now we've come back. We've kept all of our files over here. This is 3804. So if I go back over here, I still don't have 3804. Okay, so I'm not sure what's happening there. It's not, maybe it's just not doing the save action. But we're going to move on because, you know, the core of the actions work just fine. It's that last little bit, and I had it working twice earlier, working through this, and it works great. It would run in about 5 seconds and do all of this stuff. So I can, what I'll do is I'll figure out what's wrong with this, and then I'll send you guys the action. If you want to use it, fine. If you don't, that's fine. But at least you can have it to maybe, you know, dissect and try to understand what's going on here. So let's just do one more thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write an action to sharpen. Okay. And whenever I sharpen, maybe I'm going to also add a little bit of contrast. So there's a few ways that you can do both of those. And I'm just going to pick a couple ways. And, you know, you probably have your own methods of doing it. But we're going to create one. I'm just going to call it sharpen. So we're going to create a new action called sharpen. Okay. And it's going to be made up of 2 different things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an adjustment layer for curves. And in my curves layer, I'm just going to come over here and grab this part, and we'll pull it down a little bit, and we'll grab this part over here and the highlights, bring it up a little bit, and, you know, make in that curve a little more. And it adds a lot of contrast to it. Now, maybe that's more you want, whatever. It doesn't really matter because you're going to have the ability to change that on your own. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I need to create a merge stamp layer. Oh, okay. I just got a message from Chris. Nobody can hear, I can't hear anybody. So maybe what I need to do is unmute you. Let's see, unmute. So I don't hear anybody now, and you're unmuted. Let's see.
We didn't get
unmute
unmuted.
everybody, even though I told it to. Unmute.
Can you
Oh, there
hear
we go.
me?
Hey, Bob.
Unmute. Huh. Well, Chris and Robin, it shows, are unmuted. Jane is unmuted.
Yeah, I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
but I can't unmute the rest of you. Interesting. Even though I say unmute all. And it says you're all unmuted. Maybe you just have to unmute yourself.
Can you read the chat box? Can you read the chat dialogue?
Yeah, it says that you're not muted. So I apologize to you guys if you can't, I can't hear anything. Maybe if you put something in the chat,
Look at
and
the chat.
I can go in there.
There's 16 messages in the chat.
Okay. Well, let me just push through this, and maybe you guys can, I don't know, send me text or chats.
That's not working either.
Let's see.
If you send him a message on Messenger, he'll
I don't have
get
a
it.
chat. I don't have a
Yeah,
chat window.
maybe that's what you did.
Yeah.
I don't even
Yeah,
see
it's
the
very
chat window in
strange.
here anymore.
There's
I don't know if
apparently
chat.
something wacky with it.
Okay.
'Cause we've been able to. He's been able to hear us before.
I can.
Oh, you hear us now? What happened?
Okay.
Oh, you did.
Guys. Well, we're gonna continue here.
No, I said he's been able
for the next
to
40
before,
minutes, and I'm sorry you're not able to converse with me. But what I need to do here, now that I've created the curves layer and I get ready for the action is actually a filter. So in order to run a filter, I need to have a layer to run it on. So I need to do a stamp merge visible. And I can't just do a merge visible here, because what if this layer were not able to be a stamp visible layer? So what I always do, and in the case of this one, it's not a problem, but what I always do is add a blank layer and then do a Command Option or Alt Shift E to create the merge visible. And what that created here was the merge visible right above the curves layer. And if I'd done it on the curves layer, well, it would have probably still been okay. But what we've got now is I'm going to change this to say sharpen. I should have changed this to say add contrast. I'll go ahead and do it. And in the sharpen, I could create it as a smart object, so I can go back and change it if I wanted to, but we're going to go ahead and just call the filter, and we're going to go to sharpen, unsharp mask, and I'm going to select something in here. It doesn't really matter what I select because we're going to change it. So we'll say okay, and then what I'm going to do is do the Shift Option left bracket to select this. So I have both of them selected, and then what I'm going to do is go to the layer up here, to the menu, and say layer and group layers to group those together, and then I'm going to say sharpen. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it off. So what I did there was just create these two layers, one layer for the adjustment layer for curves, and another layer to sharpen with unsharp mask. But what I'm going to do is, if you notice, there's little boxes over here on the left. If you select one of those, it's going to say, I want you to stop and let me put in my own values. That's called a modal. So these over here, and you can see that there are some all along here. And if it's on one of these filters, or excuse me, one of these folders, that means that there's a layer in there or a action in there that has a section that has a modal associated with it. So in this case, whenever I turn this on, you notice this came on and this came on. So I'm going to say stop when you make the adjustment layer, and then I'm going to say stop when we go to unsharp mask right there. So now if I run sharpen, it should, and I may make sure that I put them in the right place. Okay, it opens this up, and basically you can just click OK on it, and I've not found a way to stop this from happening. But this opens up, and now you can do your own thing to select your own, do whatever you need to do. And then you say OK, and then it's going to open up the unsharp mask, and notice that it's doing this down here as we go along. And you can create your sharpening however you want to, and you're okay. So that's how you create an action that opens up for input. And again, it's called modal, and if you get confused about it, you can look up modal actions or something like that on YouTube, and there's probably hundreds of them out there that'll show you how to do that. So we've talked about conditional over here. We've talked about insert a stop and insert conditional. And now we've talked about modal. We didn't talk about insert menu item. If you insert a menu item, basically you have to tell it the menu item that you want, and it inserts it in there. But if you do a regular action, you can insert a menu item anyway. So I'm not really sure what you gain from using this. So I've never really found a use for that. Insert path, we've not, you need to create paths in order to do that. And I really haven't, I've been working with Photoshop for years, but I really don't use paths, and I'm probably missing out on something. But I don't have a path to insert. And I know there are certain filters, such as the render flare, render fire. Is that what it is? I can't open it up. Unless I'm down here. I know that some of these, like render flames, that's what it is. Render flames, you have to use a path in order to put the flames in there. So there are certain things that require paths that would allow you to do certain things. So if I were going to do render flames, then I would probably have to insert a path in here if I were going to create an action for it. So I think that's about all I wanted to talk about with actions. And again, I'll see if I can find out what's wrong with this. I'll restart Photoshop and try to troubleshoot that, but it's probably something really simple. But it's really kind of a cool action that once you run it, it goes, and usually it goes in about 3 or 4 seconds. And then you just go post it on Facebook or whatever. And it's kind of helpful, to keep you from having to do, too much, helps with your productivity and helps you not have to remember so much. So message, Alfonso asked if you could send a test chat message to the Zoom meeting. Sure. Sure. Can you see this? Okay, so I'm not sure what's going on with the voice. Why I can't hear you guys. Hopefully you can hear me just fine. I apologize for that. I don't know what to do except probably get out of Zoom and come back in. But now that we're already down to our last 30 minutes, maybe you can just send me questions over here. And yeah, Robin, that was a private chat. That's why it didn't go to you. And I'm not sure why it was a private chat. It was sent to me from Alfonso privately. And so when I replied back, it went privately back to him. So let's see. I didn't get merged the layers. You mean you don't understand it? I assume that's what you mean. Basically, I'm trying to collapse the layers together, which means it bakes it in and it creates a layer that is the consolidation of those two, which you can't undo anymore. So you won't be able to change those. And if it's merge all layers, it's the same thing. I'm just flattening the layer so that everything gets baked into one single layer. Okay. Now I'm going to move on from actions and talk about blending modes, the blending options. If you have any burning questions about actions, go ahead and throw them in this chat window because I can see everything here that you put in. Where was the if command? There is no if command, it's the conditional. If you go over to the right side over here and just select insert conditional, it adds the if command in there for you, and then you can put your else. You can select your if and then else statements. So in essence, we can just use the conditional action for actions like this. You can use the conditional, again, I talked about, I'm just going to open one here, and at the bottom, well, I'll just add a new in here like this. It's called action 1, and turn it off, because you're not going to do any keystrokes at this point. So you're just going to add this conditional in there, insert conditional, and these are your conditions right here, Alfonso. This is all you have the option to say. Is it a layered background? Is it a profile of sRGB? Is the layer visible? Is the layer locked? Is a pixel layer? It's all these different things that you can use, but you can't just create your own. So when you do this, say if it's landscape, and then prepare for social media, whatever you select, whatever these are, and you say okay, then it creates your if statement over here based on what you select. So I hope that helped that. See, does it still do that if you add it first and then resize? Does it still do that? I'm not sure what that is. Sorry, Alfonso. Disregard. I wonder if this muting overrides us unmuting. Weird. Okay. That last action to sharpen, I didn't do that last step, merging the layers. It didn't do that last step. Oh, well, it's basically, I think you're talking about the, here where I do the merge visible. And basically, what I'm doing here, let me just delete this layer to show you. What I'm doing here is I'm adding a blank layer, and then I'm doing the Command, Option, or Alt, Shift, and then E. That's the command to do that. Okay, and then it creates the merge, and that merge is a merging of all of these right here, every visible layer. That's why it's called merge visible. So it merges all the visible layers, everything that has their on eyeball turned on. It created a merged layer here. And I need some kind of layer like that in order to do the filter. And that's the reason why I did the merge visible. Okay. Oh, you get it now. Good. Okay. So let's move on. And we're going to look at blending options now. And there's so much here that was a little bit daunting at first, you know, for me when I started first looking at it. So it's a little bit to understand, I think. There's not a lot here, but there's a lot behind it. So we're going to start right here, and we're going to talk about the general blending. Well, I'm on this layer down here. Notice down at the bottom, the layer 0 at the bottom is what I selected. And open the layer styles, and I just double click on the side, or you can click the FX button down here. It does the same thing. Blending mode here is the blending mode here. Opacity here is the opacity over here. So all this does is it reflects what you've done down here in the layers panel for the blending mode. If I change this screen, it changes this to screen. You can just barely see it maybe. If I change this opacity 35%, it changes this down here to 35%. If I click OK, you can see it down here, 35% on screen. So all that is a reflection of what's down here, but you can still change it here. Okay, back to normal here. Okay, advanced blending, the fill opacity. This is where people get a little confused. The fill opacity is the same thing as the fill opacity over here. One more time, if I take fill opacity and I move it down, it's going to bring down the fill opacity just like it does. Well, I'm on the wrong layer here, but let's go here. Well, we'll take the fill opacity here back up. I meant to be on the other layer. This is 35%. Okay, right here. One more time. Fill opacity here, if I bring it down, it's bringing down the opacity of the layer. Now, the thing that it is different between this and opacity up here is that if there is a layer style associated with it, such as we have a drop shadow on this one, it's not affected when you pull the opacity down. So I can take this to 0 and the drop shadow is still there. So that's the difference between fill. And if you've ever wondered what the difference down here is, it probably has never made a difference with you because you've never had the need to have a layer style associated with it and have the layer style not affected. So again, if you take the opacity down, it takes everything out. But if you take the fill down, it only takes out everything except the drop shadow or any layer style that you have associated here. Okay, so that's pretty simple. Okay, so turn that off and we're going to turn on this one. The RGB stuff. Now this is kind of interesting, and I don't know that it's anything that's going to help anybody, but it's kind of interesting. What happens is if I turn this red off here, it's going to only bleed through. Let me make sure that these are set. They should be on normal. And that's a linear dodge, so we're going to change that to normal. And make sure that that's passed through. Okay, good. Okay, so if we take this blue, for example, and I turn off the red, it takes the red from the previous layers down below. And the only red that's in that part of the image is this gray. So it's taking the red values from this gray and blending it with that image. If I take the green out, it also removes the green in this blue and blends the green from the layer below in with that. So there are blue values down here and red values down here, and that's what it's blending in with this. Kind of interesting. If I turn it off, then there's nothing there. No blue. Notice you're only on this one layer here. That's because it has none of the values here. And again, if I turn the red on, now it's blending in with the red down below. Okay? Blending in with this gray, I mean. So it's taking the red from the below images, all of the red from all of these layers, and blending it in with this layer. Weird. And the only thing on here is blue, so it's taking the red, or this red from this image, and it's blending in any red down here with this blue. And the only red really that is part of this part of the image. Everything over here is transparent, so it's only this part that we're looking at. So there's only gray down here in this part that we're looking at. So it's taking the green and the blue from this part and it's blending it with that. So it's really, I don't know how helpful that is, but it's kind of interesting, and it goes the same with this down here. If I take this one and do the same thing, then your green is going to be changing. The green is coming from this gray down below. Add the red, remove the blue. So you get all different kinds of combinations. Where it gets interesting is, let's just open one here. Right here, if you wanted to do this, you could have a red image, or you could have a red-green image, or you could have a green and blue image. So you could do stuff like that just for abstract stuff. But for me, this isn't useful for me. I mean, if I was really way down into it, then I might find something useful for it. RGB layer style might be useful for composites to color match. I don't know. You might have to show me what you mean by that. Let's go back over here now. So anyway, oops. Do I have two of those? I do have two of those. Huh. Okay. The next one is pretty much the same way as far as how helpful it is. This is called knockout. And what knockout does is it's called knockout because it's supposed to knock a hole in the layers below down to a certain level. So for example, if I take this and I don't know if this is going to work because I had all kinds of trouble with it. If I go shallow, it changes. So it doesn't blend with this guy anymore. It's blending with the layer below it. What happens is it goes to the last, next to the last layer in the stack. Now I canceled out of that, so that's why I go to shallow again. Instead of blending with this is the last, next to the last layer in the stack that's visible, okay? So it's blending with this one instead. If I had another layer below it, it would poke a hole through both of those and blend with it. So it goes down to the one next to the end in order to blend with it. Useful? Maybe. I don't know. If I go deep, it goes all the way to the bottom. And basically, it's not blending with anything. So if you tried to blend that down here with this gray layer, you're going to get exactly this. Okay? So knockout, it's a knockout for me. It's a strikeout for me. Okay? So now we have some things that are actually useful, I think. I'm going to turn that off. We're going to turn this on. Blend interior as a group. Now, maybe not this one so much, but blend interior means anything that is a layer style that deals with inside, you can blend them as a group. And what do I mean? Inner glow, satin, gradient overlay, pattern overlay. Now drop shadow is not one of them, but these are all ones that deal with the inside of the image. And if I take like the inner glow and play with it a little bit, you'll see it change. The inner glow begin to change a little bit there. So anything that's changing the inside, and I just did these. I didn't try to make anything fancy out of it. I just did them and moved some sliders. It can have a, the same blending mode will apply to all of those effects. Okay, if I turn that off, it has a different effect. So if your effect, and basically what it means is each one of these can have their own blending mode. If I want them to all have the same blending mode, then I click that. It's default, it's turned off. So I'm used to working with it turned off. So maybe, maybe not. Moving on to blend clip layers as a group. Turn this off, turn this on. We have this guy clipped to this guy, okay? And the background, or this one, typically when that is selected, this is blend, you know, attaches to this same blend mode. If that's not selected, then it doesn't take on that blend mode, okay? So that I could see where that could be useful. Now I can't think of anything specifically for it, but I could see where that could be useful if you wanted to have this associated with this, but you wanted this to have its own blend mode. For example, oops, I said, if I wanted this to be screened or darker, something like that, and I didn't want it to affect what's being clipped to it, then, you know, I may want to use this. So this, and it's default that it is turned off, turned on. So by default, it's turned on like this, and you would go, ooh, I don't want him to have that blend mode. So you just come in here and turn it off. So at least you know, this is something that could be very useful, I think. Okay. So turn that off. transparency shapes layer. I don't know if I would be able, I would use this one or not, but basically what it's saying is that let me turn this on, is that if this is turned off, anything, let me turn this, sorry, this is supposed to be a transparent layer. So you see this is transparent here, and I have a drop shadow on this transparent. If I take this and I turn this off, it can't have any kind of a layer style in the transparent area. So if you're putting a layer style, let's say you're doing a composite and you've got a football player that you're putting on the field, and you want to put a highlight around his edge to kind of show the light coming in. You can, if you have too much of it, then you can turn this off, and maybe you have it, that's kind of a bad example. That's actually for the next one. But if you have a particular layer style that you want to use, but you don't want it to bleed out here. Maybe you've got inside layer styles like the satin or the inner shadow, but they're bleeding out to the outside, or you have something in here that's bleeding out to the outside. That's when you would turn this off. Otherwise, you would have it turned on. So I've got a stroke around here and a drop shadow. So this one maybe not so much, but the next one, layer mask hides effects. By default, when you create a layer style, the layer mask will have nothing to do with it. So if I open this up, I have a layer mask here. And if I come in here and I go to erase that, go down here on the mask, big brush, and I just start erasing this. Oops, let's go to 100%. It's turned on, must be turned on. Yeah, it's turned on. If I turn that off, which is the default, let me come back over here and start over. If it's turned off and I go to erase something, shoot, turned it back on. Turn it off and I start to erase something on the layer mask. There we go. Start to erase something. Look at what it does. It keeps the layer style there. I still have, now I'm not sure why it's giving me this big border around it, but it keeps the drop shadow there. It doesn't get rid of that. Looks like it's burning it up. So if you don't want that to happen, then you want to be able to erase the layer style, then you select that and you can come in here now. Keep doing that. It goes directly back to there instead of the mask. Now it can create, you can delete that layer style. And this is what I was referring to a minute ago. If you wanted to do a football player and you wanted to do a highlight, and you wanted to do an outer glow on one of his arms or something to kind of show the light coming in, when you do that outer glow, it's going to be all the way around him. And what you can do is use this particular option to go in there and erase it everywhere except on the arm where you want it. So real useful, I would think that this would be, and I've used it a few times. So, all right. That's pretty much it. Oh no, I did want to do one more thing. We've talked about blend if, and we know, how to use blend if to remove some shadows and some highlights and that sort of thing. But have we thought about using, there's also the RGB values here. So what you can do, let's see if I can find the image. Here we go. What you can do is come in here, change this to blue, and then you can grab this and pull it down a little bit, and then you can grab the edge here and pull it out and start removing that sky. And you can actually leave a little bit of it here because you probably want to leave enough, because you have a little bit of blue cast on these trees, so you probably don't want to delete that, but you can leave a little bit of the blue here. And then what you can do is come in here and in your library, grab one of these. Now this is my library, yours probably is nothing like this. Grab one of these blue skies, maybe this one, for example, and bring it down here. And it would need to go below that. So then you can take that and add a new sky in here. I kind of like the other sky, but now you've got this sky that you might like. Now you've got the little bit of the halo here of these clouds. So it's not perfect. And then you could add this back pretty easily because you've got a little bit of the blue bleeding through there. But you'd have to find all the little areas where you're having a problem. And pretty simple to fix. And basically to fix this, all you'd have to do is take this and copy it and then come down here, double click, bring these back like this, and then put a mask on it and invert it, and then come back here and paint white right here on this tree to bring back the original image. So it becomes pretty simple at that point. And if you wanted to get rid of this up here, you may be able to paint some in there too. But anyway, a real quick and easy way to do a sky replacement. Doesn't always work. It works if it's a really dark blue sky because you're using the blue channel in your blend if here. And you can play with that to maybe get the colors a little better. Maybe to bring back some of the blue there or to take away more of the blue. Maybe that works a little better. So that is that. Real quick, I knew it wouldn't take long to go through this. I am so sorry that you're not able to talk with me. I so much enjoy our discussion. But I think that is it. Also sorry that the action didn't quite work, the final action. I'll take care of that. And like I said, I'll get you out a copy. I'll put a link out on the Facebook group. So that is all I have. Hopefully it was helpful. I think actions are really cool. They're very, very helpful. And you know, just over time, if you find yourself doing the same thing over and over, just create an action for it. It'd be a lot faster. If you find that you have a particular technique that you want to do over and over and over, you know, that you don't want to have to remember the particular settings, create an action for it. So that's it. Thank you. And we will see you in a couple weeks.